We focus a lot on exploring different spiritualities and really looking at questions of how people live their spiritualities and their passion in life. I think Ambassador Cousin is an amazing example of that. So, Ambassador Cousin, as I was saying, really just like to hear about how you got into this passion and how that story of your passion really developed for feeding the hungry of the world.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for this invitation to join you tonight in this conversation and to talk to your students and the members of your community about this work of addressing the issue of food security. And then let's set some ground rules for this conversation.
Sure.
And the one ground rule is Ertharin, please.
Okay.
I appreciate the recognition of my service as US Ambassador, and thank you very much for that. And if my mother ever goes on and sees this, she'll be very pleased that you did. But you and I know each other, and we're both servant leaders. And so let's talk to each other like we do when we have these conversations when the cameras aren't rolling. So
Wonderful.
I will not call you doctor and you will not call me ambassador.
No.
Okay, so what got me started? Very seriously, I was born to this. If I ever write a book, that's the title, Born This Way.
Wow.
I grew up in a family where food was, as it is in so many families, at the center of our relationships. Everything we did was around a meal. Whenever there was, whether it was joy or whether it was pain, you brought out food. That's part of the traditions of the African American community, that it's about food. But what made, I think, my family really different, and so I know there's someone sitting out there who say my family did the same thing, but there was always a seat at the table for anybody who could not afford a meal. We lived in one of the famous Chicago 2 flats where my grandmother lived downstairs and we lived upstairs, and there were always people at my grandmother's house because they knew that the times were hard. You could go see Nana and she'd fix you something to eat. She was the lady who sold candy on the porch, which meant that her door was always open. And so that's drew in the community. And what that did for us as children was instilled in us a responsibility for those who have much to share. And then you compound my grandmother, this family of food lovers and foodies before foodies is even a word that we acknowledge, with a father who was, as I like to say, a community organizer before Barack Obama made it popular. And he was very much involved in every single community organization on the west side of the city of Chicago in Lawndale. He was one of those leaders who believed that the way to change our community was by being involved. And he was also a chef. And my grandmother owned restaurants, my dad owned bars, my dad owned restaurants. And so we grew up peeling potatoes in their kitchen and participating, while at the same time participating in local elections by serving as the kids passing out literature for candidates that were progressive candidates in the community. So born this way. And the last piece is that it's in my blood, not just in my experience. My grandfather was, and my mother doesn't let me say sharecropper, he was a farm laborer in Washington, Georgia. Wow. And for most of his youth and through his adult life until he was older and he went to work at the mill. But he believed in growing food to feed his family, to support his community. They were people who not just worked the fields, but there was always a hog in his backyard that he was fattening up, that he would feed his family and share food with the community. So this is born and bred who I am, experientially who I became. And I always say my sisters grew up and found real jobs, and I made a passion. I followed my passion and continue to work in the space.